So brake hard, down one, keep the brake on, turn in, off the brake, there we are. That's better. Lovely, good job. Good, you got some car control.
Hey guys, how's it going? Last week I was invited by American Assassin Film, which has just been released in the UK, to Palmer Sports at the Bedford Autodrome. Now, the reason I was invited along was because they wanted to show that becoming an assassin is a combination of skills, obviously. Now, there's the fighting aspects of it, and in this particular film, there's also the driving aspects of it. There's a lot of stunt driving that goes on in the film, so they wanted to somehow show us how a normal human being like myself can cross over and potentially be a small part of an assassin. Now, in order for me to become a good trained fighter, that would take years, whereas honing my driving skills, considering I'm not too bad to start off with, can soon become, you know, very close to stunt driving, but obviously nowhere near the level that their stunt drivers are. Now, talking of stunt drivers, one of their main stunt drivers on the set, and in fact a guy that does a lot of stunt driving, the original Stig, legendary race car driver Ben Collins, when they told me he was coming along to be my personal coach for the day, I just couldn't believe it. It was like meeting a hero of mine, but not just that, actually spending the day with him, you know, having breakfast, lunch, discussing the film, discussing just normal things with him was just awesome. It was really an absolute pleasure spending the day with Ben Collins and picking up a lot of techniques along the way. So the day started with us going down to Bedford Autodrome. Once we arrived, I sat down and watched the American Assassin trailer with Ben Collins, and after that we discussed a few things about what it was like to film it, you know, the actual inside, behind the scenes knowledge from the man himself, and it sounded fascinating, all the stuff they went to, and some scenes that you would automatically assume were completely either in a studio or a complete closed set were actually on public streets, and some of the bystanders you see were actually just normal bystanders. So yeah, it sounded very complex, especially the scenes in Rome and stuff, but very exciting at the same time.
The premise, as I understand it, really, you know, Mitch becomes a highly trained CIA killer and goes through levels of training which would be almost incomprehensible for a civilian. So my role was going as a stunt driver, and we did some training with Dylan, who plays a character, and the stunt coordinator, a guy called Buster Reeves, who's world champion kickboxer. He's done MMA. He's an absolute, you know, he's a martial arts guru. Yeah. Incredibly tough. Yeah, very dangerous, but on a night out particularly. He's an amazing guy, and he's sort of works in every aspect of stunts, sort of wire work, jumping, you know, fire, all that sort of stuff. So he's brought in, and yeah, really the fighting side of it is absolutely full on. You can see there's a lot of that in the trailer as well. And Buster brought this wicked team, so I got to do the driving elements, and I can explain a bit about that later. So I suppose there were two choices really. We could have stuck you in the ring for some MMA action, or bring you to a track where you're going to get a very high level of training in a specific skill, which is very much like what happens with CIA or Special Forces. They'll focus on each individual skill, and they'll take it to the nth degree, sort of to bring your your level up much higher than anybody else's.
Now, unfortunately, like many of these track events, and in fact one that I did with BMW earlier this year, when you turn up to these organised motorsport or organised experience days, they don't usually allow you to film. Now again, with Palmer Sports, they're a very high-end track day specialist company that have been around for years, and they have some seriously set rules and regulations, and I totally respect and understand that. Now when I got there and I asked them about filming, I was basically told I wasn't allowed to film anything. So trying to make this video was very hard from that point onwards. And in fact, the only time I could actually film was when I persuaded one of the instructors to let me put one GoPro in one of their M4 GTP cars. So the rest of the footage is either stuff that they'd sent me, the single-seater stuff, or there's a little bit of a snippet of Ben Collins taking me around in another LM car. My first activity for the day in a team of people that we were sharing with was a go-karting session. Now they were just fairly basic, soddy sort of 4-stroke karts, and I went out in them and did myself proud. I was the fastest guy in the karts. It was a pretty basic track, but it was just getting a feel, sort of an entry level into the first sort of part of the day before we jumped into more exotic, expensive and faster machinery. We went from the go-karts straight up to the LM cars. Now the LM cars, I can only describe them as LMP2 cars in WEC or Le Mans. So open cockpit, twin seats, massively high downforce, lots of grip, full slicks obviously, very fast, very effective, very nimble cars. Now I was lucky enough to obviously have Ben give me a bit of a briefing and advice before we went out in them, and I also had a experienced professional instructor sitting next to me, so he took me through, you know, the whole lap. I didn't know the lap. I've never been to Bedford before, so I had to understand the lap and then understand the car and understand, you know, the heat coming into the tyres and the late braking, and it was really being thrown in at the deep end. So after I'd been out in the twin-seater LM car, I then came back, looked at the time, lap times, etc. Ben was reasonably impressed with my efforts. He gave me some more advice, and before I knew it, we were out in the single-seater F Formula 3000 cars. Now, these cars are actually very similar in pace around this particular circuit, but obviously this time I'm on my own, and I've never driven a single-seater before, you know, open cockpit, very much like a very basic Formula 1 car, if you like. If you saw one, you'd think, oh, that looks like a simple F1 car. good.
Well,
flat out.
You're fastest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that last, I didn't, every time I kept going, right, I'm going to pace myself, I backed off a few laps, do a fast lap, and every time there was a spin or something.
So it's like a qualifying lap at Monaco, was it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, it was like that. It was fun though, really fast. I went out first lap and I was just, when the tyres are cold, it's just like fast go-kart, there's no grip. I didn't see, spun out in the first corner, then about the third corner.
I missed that.
And I was like, calm down.
I saw someone spin right in front of you on the second lap.
Yes, yeah, that's right, yeah, just down there.
That was pretty cool.
But yeah, no, it was great. Once you get heat in the tyres, it was good. It was feeling good at the end, but then just didn't get a lap, so.
Yeah, nice, well, it looked good.
But good work.
If you joined one up, it would have been a keeper.
Yeah, it was good. Wow. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Thanks for coming.
Just so I can, I might make it up, yeah. Afterwards, we sat down for lunch and Ben gave me some more small tips as to what I might have been doing wrong or how to improve my times. He was reasonably impressed with my times, but obviously there's always things that I could be improving. So it was hard for him though, because obviously he was watching it from the sidelines. He wasn't in the car with me effectively, and I couldn't hear him over the sort of the earpieces. So every time I came in, I could ask him for a bit of advice on something, and that was extremely helpful. It's not every day you have Ben Collins as your pit crew, you know. Then we headed over to a smaller, slightly tighter circuit for the M4 GTP cars. Now, from what I could see, they were M4s stripped out, so lighter, with, I can't remember the brand of the tyres, but they were similar to, let's say, your Michelin Cup 2s. So they were very track bias, road legal tyres by the looks of things. Very little tread in them, and they looked like they worked on temperature again. So they look pretty menacing. It had AP brakes. I think it had a very trick suspension setup. So it was a very tuned M4. Whilst I was sitting in that, and you'll see the footage, I was getting a briefing by another brilliant instructor, and the heavens opened. I mean, they really, really did. So it had been dry for days. So it was about the worst condition you could ever go out in. You know, when the tarmac's been dry for days and then suddenly it rains, you get all the oil comes to the surface. There's just very, very, very little grip available. So it was like an ice rink, and I wasn't complaining because that is awesome. But I think we only had 6 or 7 laps in the car, and my first sort of end of my first lap, the rest of my second lap was completely blind. It was so, the rain was so heavy I could barely see beyond my bonnet, so it did make it very challenging. If I knew the circuit and I knew the layout, then it would have been a lot more fun, but the first few laps were a little bit stressful because I was trying to learn the circuit as well as learn the conditions, the car, etc. So that was a real challenge.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, so put your foot on the brake, across to the right. We need to turn around and we're going to join the circuit behind us. That's it. That's it, good job. Up again. You want the wipers on a bit faster, just click them up and they will go faster. And brake hard, good. Down 1 and 2. Come off the brake, carry the speed through. That's it. Brake again, look right, in, tight, tight. Squeeze it on. Good, well held. Turn later. Nice and gentle, well done. Okay, so here last time we understeered a bit wide, so keep the brakes on that a little bit longer. So brake hard, down 1, keep the brake on, turn in. Off the brake, there we are. That's better. Lovely, good job. Good, you got some car control. Normally I would have turned the traction fully on. Brake hard, down again. I can tell you can handle it.
Oh, there again, trail braking in, mate.
Yeah, it does help, yeah. This car does tend to understeer a little bit in these conditions with these tyres. No, you carry on. Okay, got the tight chicane. Brake hard now. off the brake, roll it through. That's it, brake again, into the right. Squeeze the power. Good. Up a gear early, good. Turn late. Get that turning done.
It's the last lap?
Last lap, well this one won't be timed, the timing line is here, but you just enjoy these last couple of corners.
Tried braking early that time.
Okay, let's go up a few gears then, and we're slow down this time. We're heading to the bits. Superb.
Brilliant.
I tell you what, it's really rare for me to sit here and just enjoy the drive.
Yeah.
And I did. So that's just well done on you, really,
well,
to be able to pedal quite well and not have much input. So it's great. Yeah, just go straight on, loop round, and we're parking amongst the other cars.
Perfect. Well, thanks for being so calm and
Yeah.
great instructor. It's like, look, it's sunny again now.
I know. You went out precisely at the wrong time. Or you could say that it was the right time.
The right time, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I had more fun in the...
Yeah, I tell you what, the times I remember the most here and enjoy the most are the ones like that.
Yes. After the M4s, my favourite experience of the day was the aerial atoms. Now, I've driven an aerial atom very briefly before at Bruntingthorpe, did a couple of laps of that, and I loved it. Now, this was a new ball game because it was still raining, the ground was soaking, you know, there was standing water in places, and the aerial atom is edgy and moves around a lot in the dry. So in those sort of conditions, it's an absolute animal. But the circuit that we're on was very tight. The instructor again that I had, different guy, really cool guy, and he basically started, I think there was about 6 traction control settings on that aerial, and he started with it in full traction, which was probably a blessing in disguise because I probably would have gone out and spun it immediately. And when he realised that I could drive, he was slowly backing it down until the last couple of laps where he turned it completely off, and it was mega. Most fun I've had in a car, I think, full stop. It was just brilliant. You know, we weren't doing silly speeds. I think the max speed might have been 85, 90 mile an hour down this little straight, but most of it was sort of 40 to 50 miles an hour, reasonably tight stuff, with the car just sliding around and talking to you. It was just brilliant. The final challenge of the day, or experience of the day, it was a challenge because the circuit it stopped raining and it was drying again, very greasy. We went out in the Clio Cup cars. Now, I'd heard from a few instructors throughout the day that the Clio Cup cars were going to be an absolute challenge, and they are a bit of a handful because they're as wide as they are long, so they're very snappy and they're very raw, you know, they're very solid, very stiff setup. So I wasn't sure what to expect, but I went out in those, and I tell you what, I mean, I know Sideways Sid manages to get front wheel drive cars very sideways with lift off oversteer. Now these things, I mean, completely by accident the first few times, the angles I was pulling in these cars, I mean, it was beyond. If it was a rear wheel drive car, you wouldn't have recovered from the angle, but because it's front wheel drive, you can pull yourself back out of these silly angles. And I don't think I've had, again, that much fun in a front wheel drive car ever. Like, my respect for a good, well set up front wheel drive car in that Clio Cup car just went through the roof. It was just way too much fun. So I certainly didn't become a stunt driver in one day, but I learned a lot about driving skills, and I learned a lot about becoming a stunt driver. Now, what I did was certainly the first stage towards becoming a stunt driver, and I think I left Palmer Sports that day feeling a much more competent driver. And after spending a day with Ben, listening to what he had to say, giving me all these little tips and tricks, it was amazing. And I'm sure if I'd spent another day or two with him on a private circuit with a stunt car, I would have learnt so much, and I would be very close to becoming a stunt driver. Whereas if it was martial arts or anything, you know, along those lines, one day learning martial arts, I wouldn't I wouldn't be that much better off as a fighter, and I certainly wouldn't want to get in the ring. Whereas doing this, I would, you know, I'd feel quite confident trying to do something. But obviously at Ben's level, he has to do everything in the one take, and the responsibilities he's got of, you know, protecting everyone around him and making sure he doesn't cause a huge accident that injures other people or himself. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a bit of a random one, and obviously without the filming elements in it, it was very difficult to put together. But I do urge you to check out the link of American Assassin film below in my description and go out and see the movie. I'm going to go and see it next week because I'm very excited about it. And in fact, the link doesn't actually show any stunt driving in it. So, but there's a fair amount in there. A few Alfa Romeos burning around, and that sort of gets me excited about seeing the film. But it also looks very good. So I just want to thank American Assassin for inviting me along to a fantastic day, and I want to thank Ben Collins for being such a good sport and having loads of patience and just give me some incredible pointers for the day, because I left Palmer Sports a much better driver than when I arrived. So thanks a lot guys. Please stay tuned for more. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, it's free. And yeah, leave any comments below. I'll try and get back to you. Cheers guys.